Hello again, Philip Nathan here, author of the Living Humanism books and writer and presenter of these videos. This particular video addresses the need for us to have integrity and honesty, to act with integrity and honesty in our personal conduct and dealings with others, if our goals of supporting the well-being of ourselves and others and preventing and reducing pain and suffering are to be achieved. This idea is embodied in Living Humanism's more specific principle 1, which urges us to act with honesty and integrity in our personal, family, work, and public life. Our truthfulness, honesty, and integrity matter for many reasons. They support and underpin our individual relationships, the relationships in our communities and societies. They enable us to work with and to cooperate with others. They support us in our crucial individual and community endeavours, in our search for answers, in our efforts to find real, practical answers to the questions we ask. Integrity and honesty are needed to help us find solutions to the problems we face, with honesty and integrity truly supporting us in maintaining and enhancing our own well-being and the well-being of all. In particular, they support the building of trust between us. And through this building of trust, through our honest and truthful conduct, we support well-functioning communities and societies and a well-functioning wider world. Integrity and honesty support cohesive communities which are cooperative, where we can work together with trust and confidence, producing communities, societies, and that broader humanity which work well, which function effectively, and support our well-being and happiness and the well-being and happiness of others. Aside from these well-being benefits, in terms of supporting our communities and building and supporting our positive relationships with others, having such honesty and integrity supports the deep inner need that almost all of us have for truthfulness, such that our integrity and truthfulness supports our own psychological well-being, not only in a positive sense, but importantly through helping us avoid pains and stresses that are associated with dishonesty and lack of integrity. Of course, clearly, if we behave with integrity and honesty and are seen to do this, then others are more likely to see us as reliable and worthy of trust. We gain a reputation for being trustworthy and credible, all of which enhances our psychological well-being and enables us to more easily be successful, not just with our relationships, but with achieving our own well-being and supporting the well-being of others. And of course, in supporting our own personal or individual life goals. Crucial in terms of supporting our personal well-being and dealing with our own pain and suffering is the need to be honest with ourselves about who we are and what we're like, what our true motivations are, acknowledging our faults and vulnerabilities, acknowledging our own mistakes, which may have led to problems for ourselves and others, helping us to come up with, devise changes in ourselves and how we behave, and helping us to find solutions to challenges we face. Deluding ourselves about who we are, though perhaps sometimes helpful in relation to well-being. Deluding ourselves in that way is in the main very likely to lead to problems for us, which perhaps we won't be able to resolve unless we can understand ourselves and are prepared to face ourselves square on. Of course, honesty, integrity, and truthfulness impinge on almost every aspect of our lives. And we have deep expectations of honesty and integrity of others, such that if they lie and cheat and lack integrity, we're often shocked by this behavior. As a consequence of our expectations of truthfulness, it's sometimes hard to take on board and cope with if others are dishonest and untruthful, if they show a lack of integrity, especially when it is those close to us whom tell us lies, mislead us, and more. While some argue, and apparently quite a lot of evidence suggests, though I can't say I've critically reviewed this evidence, a lot of evidence suggests that there is a lot of untruthfulness, and that there are many lies of sorts told in our lives. The reality is that, in fact, honesty and integrity are our daily expectations and clearly predominate in our daily lives. Day to day, we certainly, as I've already said, expect others in our lives to tell the truth, and we're almost always offended and shocked if they do not do so. Because truth-telling and integrity is an expectation in our lives, is an expectation of others. Not only within our friendships, within our families, but our everyday life transactions, our financial transactions, our working lives, these all require a high level of integrity from all parties. And if such integrity and honesty is not there, our communities and societies will be substantially damaged. And indeed, in some, if not many contexts, they are damaged due to such dishonesty and lack of integrity. Untruthfulness, dishonesty, lack of integrity undermines and is destructive of our families, communities, societies, and our broader humanity. Frameworks that support honesty and integrity are necessary through education, through acknowledged and publicly accepted and demonstrated values of honesty and integrity, if we are to support well-being and happiness and reduce pain and suffering. The above being said, and truthfulness, honesty, and integrity being strongly advocated here, it can be reasonably argued, and it's certainly not contested in this video or in the guides, that sometimes it's necessary to be less than truthful, that sometimes, in some matters, it is acceptable and demanded of us to be less than truthful, and that indeed, on some occasions, it's necessary to make totally false statements, that is, to lie and to tell untruths. However, we must always retain integrity. Since supporting well-being and the prevention of pain and suffering is the primary goal, then this need, indeed requirement to be sometimes untruthful, must sometimes be the case and must be fulfilled. To illustrate, elucidate that point, we'll all be aware that in social situations, for example, if we're organizing a surprise birthday party for someone, then it's acceptable to mislead the party recipient. In the classic and oft-quoted example, if someone's bought a new item of clothing or had a new haircut, which they're heavily invested in, even if we dislike it, then it's still acceptable and perhaps good and positive, the best thing to do in terms of the relationship and well-being, to be complimentary and positive, and thereby hide our true opinion. There are many situations like this and many other situations where we may not wish to volunteer our personal thoughts or tell what we consider to be the whole truth. And dependent on issues tied to well-being, the reduction of pain and suffering, this may well be acceptable. On more serious and grave matters, if we're living within the context of, for example, of an oppressive, violent, perhaps racist, murderous dictatorship, we have no obligation to answer truthfully as to the whereabouts of a friend or government opponent who might be tortured or murdered if found by those in power. While we might be stating falsehoods in such circumstances, we are supporting broader well-being as much as we can and maintaining our integrity through our showing care for others. There may be many similar reasons for making false statements under trying circumstances. As ever with living humanism, while there are general principles and strongly held principles put forward in the guide and in these videos, context, situations, and circumstances are likely to be of great importance. Important, crucial within the framework of living humanism, as stated in the 11th specific principle in the Living Humanism Guide. Many problems are seen as needing individual solutions in our efforts to promote well-being and reduce pain and suffering, which are our priorities, which are core principles. That being said, such examples of telling falsehoods and untruths, firstly in the grave situation described, will hopefully not arise for many of us. And secondly, in the other, perhaps more gentle social circumstances, these untrue statements should certainly be used as sparingly as possible within the context of maintaining and supporting our positive relationships and promoting well-being and happiness. We certainly have judgments to make Nevertheless, in the vast main, we need to be truthful, honest, be worthy of the trust of others, and have and demonstrate integrity. Of course, dishonesty damages, as already pointed to earlier in this video. I've already mentioned the individual stress and the pain our own dishonesty can cause us, and the shock we feel when we find others close to us have lied to us. But people lying to us can be extremely damaging to us psychologically through, for example, leading us to possibly question ourselves and our own state of mind, leading us to question our grip on reality, the behavior in some cases qualifying in more extreme examples as the extremely unpleasant phenomenon of gaslighting. Notably and importantly, some callous individuals will play on our trustworthiness, play on our assumptions of truth and veracity in regard to what others say, our desire to be positive and charitable to others, and will use these assumptions and beliefs to hurt and damage us. We need to be aware that there are those who lack honesty and integrity, who will dishonestly manipulate and hurt maybe us and others. We mustn't be naive, but at the same time, we must avoid being overly suspicious and reticent with others, something which itself can damage well-being and damage relationships. But of course, if we are overly critical of others, walk around with our eyes closed, sometimes that can make us vulnerable to those people who are prepared to act with cruelty and dishonesty towards us. It's likely unwise for us to be unprepared for those who we might meet in life and may well encounter at some time, who might be prepared to act towards us in cruel, callous and dishonest ways, or who perhaps are prepared to act towards us with indifference and lack of concern. Those who lack integrity and may be solely out for their own gain and pleasure, at our expense or at the expense of others. Undoubtedly, people engaging in such behavior may be continuously suffering psychologically in some ways. For example, being constantly worried they'll be found out, and perhaps worried about punishment for what they've done and what they're doing. And in the end, they will hopefully find their callous, uncaring behavior against other individuals, against our communities, societies and beyond, have some negative outcomes, serious negative outcomes for them. Hopefully they will at some point change their ways, and sustaining lies and dishonesty is often difficult, with there being major complexities involved in maintaining lies, with our other evidence often coming to light demonstrating previous dishonesty and discrediting those without integrity, with substantial detriment to such people. Even in positions of severe stress, it is generally for the best if we are honest and truthful, previous caveats aside. There's much more that can be said about honesty, integrity, and truthfulness. The chapter on this in Living Humanism, part 1 of the guide, chapter 7, runs for 140 pages or so, which would make for a long video. So if you're interested to read more of what I've written about this, then please refer to the written Living Humanism guides. As usual, if you have any comments, please place these in the comments section below this video. Our next video moves on to look at issues of peace, conflict and violence, these being covered by a number of principles which I'll outline in the next video. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.